Well, we're just about ready to make our first cuts. But before we do, I wanted to talk about tool alignment. Please take the time to align all your tools. Just because they're new does not mean they've come aligned. So spend a few minutes, make sure they're aligned, and that will pay big dividends in the end. Well, I've gone through my lumber stack and I've picked out the boards that I'm going to cut out my slab strips from. If you're going to make a copy of my bench with the 6-inch wide tool tray in it, you will need to allow for 12 slab strips. If not, you will need to allow for 16. Additionally, I'll be cutting my slab strips to 80 inches. If you're going to build a longer bench, just add the additional length to that slab strip. I've already have my chop saw set up. I've set my end stop at 80 inches. My first cut will be to trim and square the end of my board, getting rid of any end cracks. Then I will slide the board down to my end stop, cut my 80 inches. Please keep safety in mind and wear your safety glasses. I've had 2 incidents in my shop where my safety glasses really paid off. One, I had a knot fly out off the top of a board as it was going through my table saw, and the knot smacked me right at the bottom of my left eye. Additionally, I had a carbide tooth come off a saw blade one day. That, fortunately, hit me in the chest. So please, I know sometimes you feel safe at certain tools. There's a nice garden cover over that blade, but wear your safety glasses and follow all your manufacturer's suggested safety recommendations. You can see how handy having this straight edge rip when I had my lumber S3S, how it pays off by going right to my chop saw. So we have our first piece for our slab strips to be cut out. So I'll set it off to the side and I'll get the remainder of my 5 boards cut. I'll catch up with you later. Well, I just finished cutting out the boards that I'm going to be using for slab strips. And this final cutoff I'm not going to need, so I'm going to set it off to the side for now. So right here's the 6 boards that'll make up the slab strips eventually for the bench top. And here's the 5 remaining cutoffs. Now, when I chose my lumber, I chose these boards on purpose, of course, and they're just over 7 inches. These top 4. And from these top 4, I will be able to cut the strips that will make up the legs to the trestle base. Their final dimension is 3 by 3 inches. The trestle feet, however, their final dimensions are 3.5 by 3.5 inches. And this bottom board is just slightly over 7.5 inches. So this works out pretty nicely for me. I'll be able to get all those pieces out of these 5 boards. To determine your bench height, a good rule of thumb is to stand up straight and measure to the first crease above your hand in your wrist. For me, that works out to be about 35.5 inches. My client, however, that I'm building this bench for, is a bit taller than me. He's 6'1", and he needs a bench height of 38 inches. The average bench height for most people works out at about 35 inches. So if you're around 5'10", 5'11", 35 inches is probably what you're going to measure. So I have a difference of 3 inches. I know that when I cut my pieces to make my legs up, for 35-inch bench height, they need to be 31 9/16 inches. So I need to add 3 inches for what my client needs for an overall bench height at 38. So my final dimension for my legs is going to be 34 9/16. But when I cut these out for right now, I'm going to add an extra inch to that to cut them at 35 9/16. And I'll cut them to final dimensions after I do my glue ups. I just set my chop saw up to do my cuts for my trussled legs at 35 9/16. I'll be right back after I get the other 4 cut. Well, I just finished my cuts for the trussled leg pieces, and I'm getting ready to make the cut for the pieces that'll make up the trussled feet. Their final dimension will be 28 inches, but for now we'll cut them at 29 and trim them after glue up.